thank you for coming. This is a conversation that I've been waiting many, many years to have. We have someone very special here with us today. We have Dr. Avi Loeb. Avi, thank you again for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm very excited to dive into this topic with you, but perhaps before we start, maybe you can elaborate a little bit about your background.
Well, that should be short because I'm basically fundamentally a farm boy. That explains pretty much where I stand right now. I'm mostly interested in nature, learning from nature. I don't care how many likes I have on Twitter. That's not the issue. We need to understand the reality we live in because that would allow us to adapt to it. And we focus on the surface of this planet that we were born on. It's a two-dimensional surface of the Earth, but there is a third dimension. And we rarely look up. And I say, the universe is too big for us to ignore it.
Absolutely. And so just so we all understand, you've been at Harvard for 30 years. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and you are the department head for astronomy at Harvard.
I was for 9 years the longest-serving chair of the astronomy department, 3 terms, yes.
That is fantastic. And over the last 2 years or so, you've been pioneering this idea that there is intelligent, non-humans existing or that have gone through our solar system. Is that correct?
Yeah, there are hints of that. Only over the past decade did we notice objects that came from outside the solar system. Astronomers spotted a meteor that came from outside the solar system back in 2014. We're actually planning to retrieve the fragments of this meteor because it looked very strange. It was moving faster than 95% of all the stars in the vicinity of the sun. And moreover, it was tougher than iron, based on the fact that it survived all the way down to the lower Earth atmosphere, despite of its very high speed. And so it was actually tougher than all other meteors in the catalog that the US government compiled. So we're going out there to Papua New Guinea. It fell about 100 miles off the coast, and we are planning to scoop the ocean floor and figure out what the fragments tell us, whether it was made of some rock that is quite rare, or perhaps an artificial alloy. And that would be the first time that humanity puts its hands on an object bigger than a basketball that came from outside the solar system. It looked weird. So I'm guided by evidence. You see, that's the way science is done. I was not theoretically expecting it. I just say, here is something weird, let's explore it, rather than saying, forget about it, move on. And then the second object that was discovered was in 2017. It was given the name Oumuamua, which means a scout in the Hawaiian language, because it was discovered by a telescope in Hawaii. And it also looked weird, because it had a flat shape based on the reflection of sunlight, and it was pushed away from the sun without having a cometary tail. It was not a comet. And so the rocket effect could not have given that push, and the question is, what was it? And once again, it's quite intriguing. So the first 2 objects from outside the solar system looked weird. I wrote a book about the second one called Extraterrestrial, and I'm just saying, let's collect more evidence and figure out what they are.
And so, just to be absolutely explicit, you believe that these objects were made by a non-human intelligence from outside our solar system.
I consider that as a real possibility because the meteor was tougher than 99.7% of all other space rocks that we had seen, okay? And it was moving faster than 95% of all the stars. And then Oumuamua was even weirder. It started in some very special frame of reference that only 1 in 500 stars are. And so there were all these anomalies. And I say, you know, when the evidence shows something unusual, you better explore it. And just like Sherlock Holmes argued that if you eliminate all possibilities, whatever remains must be the truth.
And we saw in 2017 the New York Times cover piece about the Pentagon having a program to identify UAPs. This was kind of a watershed moment in the space. It initiated this idea that we should be taking some of this stuff seriously, that all of the talks of UFOs, that things in our sky, may not actually be a joke. It may not be a conspiracy. And what I'm hearing you say is, you believe, as the former department head of astronomy at Harvard, that this could be from an intelligent species that is not on Earth. I mean, that is so meaningful and consequential.
Yeah, well, we already know that a substantial fraction of the stars, like the Sun, have a planet the size of the Earth, roughly the same separation. That came from the Kepler satellite data. And therefore, thinking that Albert Einstein was the smartest scientist who ever lived since the Big Bang 13.8 billion years ago doesn't make sense. It's very arrogant. There must have been a smarter scientist on another planet who lived 1 billion years ago. And the civilization that benefited from the wisdom of that scientist could have sent probes with artificial intelligence, 3D printers that would repair themselves and perhaps even self-replicate, just like biological systems. We are almost at the point where we will send AI astronauts to space. And so they might have done that 1 billion years ago. They might not be around, so we should engage in archaeology of space, of interstellar space. Check if we live in a reality that is not science fiction, it's actually science. And you know, I attended the Ignatius Forum at the Washington National Cathedral on November 10th, 2021, and I was in the green room together with Avril Haines, the Director of National Intelligence, who wrote the report that was delivered to the US Congress. And so I approached her and said, Avril, you have a bachelor's degree in theoretical physics. What's your gut feeling? What are these objects you are talking about that you call unidentified aerial phenomena? And she said, I don't know.
Yeah, so I think that, Avi, you and I have spoke about this, but when I have this conversation with people and I mention that there seems to be some evidence to support this notion, people look at me like I'm crazy, absolutely crazy. I think that perception is starting to shift, but we're not there yet. Most people still think it's quite crazy. And so I'm curious, when you talk to someone, what is the single most compelling piece of evidence, or what is the pitch that you give to try to convince someone, or at least open their mind to the idea that this could be true?
Well, I think we should be guided by evidence, by data, not by prejudice, not by our ego that we are the smartest in the world, because my daughters thought that they are at the center of the world when they were infants. And of course, it was traumatic for them when we brought them on the first day to the kindergarten. They realized there is a smarter kid on the block. Okay? So we, as a civilization, we didn't mature yet. We thought that we are at the center of the universe. Turned out to be wrong. When Galileo argued that, he was put in house arrest. Today, he would have been canceled on social media. And if you were to ask those philosophers at the time to design a space mission to Mars, they would never reach the destination because they thought that Mars moves around the Earth. So my point is, it's our obligation to recognize what reality is. And the only way to figure it out is by collecting data and evidence. And my point is, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So if we were to come close to Oumuamua, for example, and take a high-resolution photograph of it, we could tell if it's a natural object or maybe it has a label made on some exoplanet, okay? And nobody could deny that evidence. So my point is, let's collect the evidence. Many people say extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. That's a statement made by Carl Sagan in the 70s. And my reply to that, extraordinary evidence requires extraordinary funding.
Yes.
We are putting billions of dollars into the search for dark matter. We don't know what 80% of the matter in the universe is. that would have very little impact on the future of humanity. However, if we find iPhone 100 rather than iPhone 13, 14, and so forth, coming from space,
Yeah.
we could make a leap, technological leap, of 1 million years into our future.
And so, Avi, let's assume that you had all of the funding that you needed to accomplish this. Let's assume that you had all of it. And you proved it. You did it. You accomplished this. You verified without a shadow of a doubt that there is another intelligent species that has been through our solar system, perhaps has even visited Earth. How do you think that would change society or humanity?
Well, first I should point out that a lot of religious people, people that engage in spirituality, are fascinated by this subject. To me, exploring the unknown is a common theme between science and spirituality. The two are not in contradiction, despite what some scientists say, because most of the time we don't know much. We have an island of knowledge in an ocean of ignorance. So many scientists are motivated by the wrong reason. They are motivated by the desire to show off that they are smart, but not by trying to understand nature. And that leads us to dark alleys that are not of interest to the general public. But here is a subject that the public cares about and that the government cares about. It's just inappropriate for it to be out of the mainstream of science. So I'm trying to draw attention to that. And I should say that I get a lot of responses.
Yeah. And as you draw attention to that, what do you think would happen, though?
Yes.
What would happen to society, to humanity, if we did, in fact, confirm that?
Well, first of all, we can learn about things we don't know. For example, discover technologies that represent our future. It would take us thousands or maybe millions of years to discover it ourselves, but there was another civilization that predated us because most stars formed billions of years before the sun, so their clock started ticking before ours, and therefore they are far more advanced. If we ever meet a technological gadget, it's likely to represent our future because our science and technology was developed only over the past century. And that's just one part in 100 million of the age of the sun. So it's a tiny piece of history. And therefore, we are likely to see something that would enrich us, both in terms of our imagination, our understanding of physics. We might discover that there is some new physics that relates to that. But more importantly, it would change our aspirations for space. It would change the way we view our place in the universe. It will give us a sense of purpose because, we will realize that there is something out there. My point is, a very advanced scientific civilization is actually a good approximation to God, what religious texts described as God, because if you see a technology that is far superior to what we possess, it would look like magic.
Yeah.
It would look like a miracle. And, such a civilization could create life in the laboratory. It might even create a universe, a baby universe in its laboratories. So for us, it would look just like what people called God in the past. But we can learn from that. I mean, I have no problem looking over the shoulder of a smarter classmate because it would save us time.
And do you think that we should be scared? Do you think that this should concern us? And I'm kind of even more curious, if you had to guess right now, you had to make one prediction, you had to do it, what do you think it is?
Right, so I don't think we should be scared because if they had any bad intentions, they would have exercised those intentions long before we developed to this phase, right? And I think most likely if we find a gadget, perhaps at the bottom of the ocean near Papua New Guinea, that it would represent a system that has artificial intelligence because biological creatures like us were selected by Darwinian evolution to survive on the surface of a planet like Earth. We will not survive for very long across interstellar distances. And you want a system to have intelligence because it cannot wait for guidance from the senders. It takes signals of light tens of thousands of years to traverse the Milky Way galaxy. So there is no way that a probe will wait for guidance. It has to decide by itself. So you can train an AI system, just like you educate kids at a young age, and then you send them off to the world. And those AI systems could visit us, they might replicate, and they might be smarter than us. But then we have our own AI systems to help us. Our AI systems may have kinship to their AI systems. For the first time in history, you will have AI interaction. You know, the philosopher Martin Buber talked exactly 100 years ago about human object and human-human and human-God interactions. Here is a new category, AI. And our AI systems could tell us what their AI systems are trying to do.
That is fascinating. Do you think that there are any governments or organizations in the world that currently know the answer to this question?
I don't think of the government as a vicious system that has any conspiracy. I think of them as incompetent scientists, in the sense that their day job is to monitor the sky, okay? And they have no choice but to notice things that they cannot understand, that have nothing to do with adversaries, so it's not a matter of national security, but they do not use the scientific method, scientific tools, and that's why we established the Galileo Project, because the sky is not classified. So we just had our first suite of instruments assembled, and now we're testing it, and eventually we'll analyze the data with artificial intelligence algorithms, and hopefully in 2023 we'll start collecting data from the sky, because we want to help the government figure out and identify the unidentified.
And so you're doing this now. You recently started the Galileo Project. You are seeking to find an answer to this question. You are, Avi, very well positioned to do that. I know that you've built a phenomenal coalition of scientists around you. Can you talk to us a little bit more about where you are in that process? And the last thing I'd say too is, I'm with you. I am shocked that there is not more interest in this subject, that there is not more financing, philanthropic or otherwise, that is seeking to answer such a fundamental question about reality.
Well, I'm actually grateful to a number of multi-billionaires who visited the porch of my home after my book came out, Extraterrestrial, and offered me a few $1 million that allowed to establish the Galileo Project after the report from the Director of National Intelligence was delivered to Congress in June 2021. But the scale of the project is currently a few $1 million, and we built our first system. We plan to deploy it in a few months, but we want to make many more copies so we get good enough data. And for that, we need at least a few times more of that funding, if not a factor of 10. And we will just be agnostic as to what we find. You know, it's just a scientific process. We want to figure out, just like a kid that is curious. You know, the worst thing that a parent can do to a kid is basically suppress the curiosity. And that's why you find some scientists that lost their curiosity. And you know, very often we don't know the answers to the questions. And the way to figure them out is by collecting data, by getting evidence. But if you are not curious, you will never collect the data. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy to say there is no extraordinary evidence because you're not seeking it. And when Enrico Fermi asked, "Where is everybody?" that was 70 years ago in Los Alamos. He didn't actually check the sky, you know. And it's just like someone sitting at home and saying, "I don't have any neighbors because I don't see anyone around me." But to find your neighbors, you need to look through your windows, and you better use a telescope.
And will you be working with the government at Galileo, or is this completely private and solely research focused?
Well, our data will be open, the analysis will be transparent. And if the government wants to collaborate on that, I'm all for it. But the government has a lot of data that is classified. And, you know, just like the play Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett, you know, you can wait for Godot, in this case, wait for the declassification of the government data. You can wait forever. and it may never happen. And therefore, I take things to my hands, and we will just try to collect the data ourselves. And because the sky is not classified, it's only the instruments that the government was using that are classified, and that's why they classified the data.
And so, just so we all understand, so the tactical things that you will be doing at Galileo, you have this expedition to Papua New Guinea to go under the ocean, retrieve this meteorite, correct, and evaluate it. That's one. You will also be scanning the skies. Those are the two core focus areas in the near future?
And there is a third one, which is to design a space mission that will rendezvous with the next Oumuamua. We already have a dating app.
A dating app?
Yes, it's called the Vera Rubin Observatory in Chile, that will start operations next year and could find objects like Oumuamua every few months.
Wow.
And most of the time, we will swipe to the left. But we might decide that there is a very unusual object that looks similar to Oumuamua in terms of how strange it is. We might even look at it with the Webb telescope and figure out that it's really strange. And then we will send a space mission with a camera that will come close to it and take a picture of it.
Wow.
And if I could substitute a photo album for my book, Extraterrestrial, I would happily do that. A picture is worth 1,000 words. I don't need to write any words if we have a very clear picture of an extraterrestrial technological gadget.
And you're writing a book about this right now, is that right?
I delivered the first version of my next book to the publisher a couple of weeks ago, yes.
That's so exciting. I really enjoyed your first book. Do you think that we're going to have an answer to this question within our lifetimes, a definitive answer?
Yeah, that simply depends on us. I call it the ostrich factor. If we don't search, we will not find anything. If you bury your head in the sand, you can argue forever that you have no evidence for what stands in front of you. But if we do invest in the search, I believe that within the coming decade, it will become pretty clear. Now, even if objects like the Meteor that I described or Oumuamua were naturally produced, they must represent something that is very different from the solar system. Objects, the rocks, the comets, the asteroids that we had seen before. So we will learn something new no matter what. I'm 100% confident of that. But my suspicion is, that we are not the smartest kid on the block. And let's just figure it out by looking at the sky.
I completely agree. And I think when we think about the future and we think about the progress of technology, we think about how the geopolitical landscape will progress over time. Something like discovering verifiable proof of intelligent life outside of Earth is a black swan event. It will change the landscape for everything. It could potentially unify humanity in a way. There is finally maybe an other. There is someone else to unify against. Is that how you feel?
Well, in fact, if you look at human history, what you find very often is a group of people trying to feel superior relative to other people, and that brings all the problems. If we realize there is someone far smarter than all of us, then the differences between humans will become meaningless. And perhaps we will start treating each other as equal members of the human species. I see that also in terms of giving us a sense of purpose. We will strive to be better classmates in this class of intelligences that within the Milky Way galaxy, because right now we are not behaving very intelligently. One reason I seek intelligence in space is because I don't find it very often here on Earth.
I love that. And what can we do, right? So there's some people here, there will be more people watching this video over time. If we want to support, if we want to get behind, advocate for this type of research, what can be done? How can we support, contribute, add value to Galileo and this initiative overall?
We have 100 people enrolled in the Galileo Project. There are 800 more who volunteered. What we are lacking are the funds necessary to make copies of the instruments such that we'll get good enough statistics on unidentified objects. We just got funded for the expedition, but there is a lot more to do. And I should say, for the past 70 years, people who searched for extraterrestrial intelligence focused on radio signals. And that is just like trying to have a phone conversation. You need the counterpart to be transmitting when you're listening. And if you wanted to have a phone conversation with Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, it doesn't matter how many phone numbers you put into your phone, he will never respond. The only way to find more about Mozart is to look at his musical notes, things he left behind. And so in much the same way, we should look for gadgets or objects in the sky that were left behind by those civilizations, because the Milky Way galaxy is like a basket. It collected over time, over billions of years, all of these rockets that were sent out of planets that hosted intelligent civilizations. Those chemically propelled rockets cannot escape the Milky Way galaxy. However, the radio signals that were sent 1 billion years ago, they're 1 billion light years away. We will never see them. So there is a much better approach that was never practiced, which is the approach taken by the Galileo Project, interstellar archaeology, looking for objects that came from advanced technological civilizations.
I think that is the spot-on mission. And Avi, I am excited to support you. I know SALT generally is excited to support you. I will say it has been an absolute privilege sitting on the SALT stage talking with you about a potential AI alien that you, as the former department head of astronomy at Harvard, believes may potentially be visiting Earth. I mean, I think that is an unbelievable statement, incredibly powerful, and requires a paradigm shift in how we're thinking about this topic. So thank you, Avi, for being here. I'm very excited about this. I hope you folks enjoyed this. And I hope that in the coming years, we will do this many more times.
Thank you so much. And I promise one thing, that if we find a gadget big enough to display at the Museum of Modern Art, I already spoke with the curator there. We'll put it on display for everyone to look at.
We'll bring it there. We'll bring it to SALT. We'll tour it everywhere together, Avi. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.